Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Friday Food Fight. My name is Wes Christian, your host for this week, and I am joined once again by the infamous Mr. Bart Christian, nationally recognized speaker, and a very, very special guest for this week. This very special St. Patrick's Day week. And Bart, why don't you introduce Miss Ashley Harris for us and tell everyone that's watching a little bit more about her.
Well, first I need virtual pinches because I have no green on, period. So, I didn't even realize it was St. Patrick's Day. That's how out of touch I guess I am. But I've got the great pleasure to introduce a young lady who I've come to know very well over the past 2 or 3 years, and who I really honestly feel is one of the bright shining stars, not only in child nutrition in Mississippi, but in child nutrition nationwide. Ashley, you are a mover and a shaker very quickly in this industry. And I'm looking at your bio and I'm realizing you're currently now the child nutrition director for Jackson County School District in Mississippi, but you got 12 years of experience prior to that. What I don't see that on here. Where were you at before you were at Jackson?
I was in Pascagoula-Goshen School District, so a city district just south of me in the same county. And so all I did was jump over I-10, and now I am the director for Jackson County School District. And that has the St. Martin Attendance Center, Van Cleve Attendance Center, and East Central Attendance Center. So it's like 3 little districts in one, spread out across the top of I-10 in Jackson County.
Well, that's got to make things interesting, having 3 kind of separate districts and under your wing. I know some other people that have done that kind of thing in child nutrition. It's always those different cultures. You're trying to meld them all together, and
that's right. We all have one bond, and child nutrition works really well because I still have just my one department, but they have 3 different assistant superintendents that I'm working with in those different attendance centers. And so it's a different dynamic than what I was accustomed to in the city, but it's a wonderful place to be, and we're doing great things here in Jackson County.
Well, I noticed that, you're a graduate of Southern Mississippi. You got a degree in dietetics and nutrition. You're a registered dietitian, a child nutrition specialist, which we're going to ask you a little bit about in just a few minutes. Okay. You served on multiple board level positions throughout the state of Mississippi on the Mississippi School Nutrition Association. I think when I first met you was when I actually did a keynote for the state conference that was in Gulfport a couple of years ago. And then, of course, we got to know each other better when we had a little group dinner with some child nutrition people from Mississippi, which I really, really enjoyed getting to know you better. And I see that, you have a passion just like I do for learning. Your bio says Ashley's a lifelong learner who believes in the power of professional development. And I do that too. I mean, that's sort of the foundation of what we do. And I think that things I do in the morning is I get up and I read, and I'm sure that you fall into that line too. But having 2 little kids, well, I guess I'm not little anymore. Is it Haley or Hallie?
Hallie. So Allie with an H is how we tell everyone to pronounce it.
So Hallie and Hazel Harris. So you got the H's going on. My family was Bart, Barry, and Blaine. My mom and daddy loved the B's. So
I just call them sister, and they answer. So
well, they called us thing 1, 2, and 3. Ashley, it's a pleasure to have you on here, and I'm so glad we could get you, and I'm so looking forward to this conversation. So, Wes, take it away.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really excited to dive into a couple of things that Bart said that we were going to be talking about today, your training and some different credentialings that you have. But just one quick question that I love to start off with every single show is tell us something about maybe something that you're just really obsessed with at the moment, whether it's school nutrition related or personal. Just tell us something that you're really into at the moment.
Well, I mean, I eat, sleep, and breathe school nutrition, have for 12 years and will for 12 more plus. But I'm currently a little bit obsessed with my family. One thing that the last year has shown me with COVID is, you've got to step back and look back at the whole picture. And so just a year ago in March, I was on the front lines, serving curbside meals and leading small groups of socially distanced food service workers to serve meals to those students and families who were just majorly impacted with that unanticipated school closure. And so one thing that I'm doing now is just focusing on what my family needs. And so Hallie and Hazel were both at really, in my opinion, at really critical school age groups when they had that unanticipated school closure. And so this school year, they've been fortunate enough to be in person, and but they did have some academic needs. And so we've been able to focus on that and take. Mom's not traveling, which has been a positive for my family currently. And so we've been focused on just getting them back on track. And so we're in a good place now. And I'm a little bit obsessed with paint colors and kitchen renovations because when all of my friends were at home during the pandemic, they were able to do their DIY projects. And so I'm just a year behind, but I'm starting to, convince my husband it's time to do some of that right now. So we're doing some minor kitchen uplifts at home. But professionally, of course, I eat, sleep, breathe child nutrition. So I'm obsessed with summer feeding right now. Not the current situation where we're running SFSP during the school year, but we're planning summer programs. And so I'm in the planning phase with principals and camp sponsors for in-person programs that will be taking place in our district in the summer. So we're going to feed those students. And so that means I'm recruiting food service workers because they were thinking they would potentially have some summer days off. And so now some of them are willing and ready to feed kids during the summer. So that there's a good bit of time and energy that goes into those summer programs right here in March and April. So that's going to be what I'm doing currently.
And I definitely want to talk to you a little bit more, actually a lot more, about summer feeding and extension of waivers and things of that nature. But I want to, quickly touch on, I have two small kids at home as well. And what you said about, really focusing on family during these times and, kind of the past year, really reminding us of what truly is important. I've got a 2.5-year-old and a newborn, actually, so a little bit younger than yours, but it's just so nice to be able to spend time with them and just really focus on those moments and creating those special moments in their life. And, we've got plans for, St. Patrick's Day celebration, since that's the week that we're in right now. And, just doing little things that, create those memories and create those special times in our lives. Tell us also a little bit about someone potentially that has had a major impact in your career over the past years.
Okay. Well, 10 years ago, I'd probably say, it was that professor from Southern Miss or my current mentor. But I think now I'm 36 years old, been married for close to 15 years, and have 2 kiddos and a dog. I'm going to say that it was 2 individuals. It was that would be my parents. And I can just say that looking back now. My dad was and still is a workaholic. He was an engineer at Ingalls Shipbuilding, and he'd work early mornings and late days, and then he'd come back and home and work on the cattle farm. And so I think just early on, his work ethic and commitment is what has really he wasn't one of many words or anything, but his actions definitely displayed work ethic. And he was always someone that was on the Cattlemen's Association or the Farmers Federation. He had standing board meetings on Monday nights at the stockyard. So he was able to juggle it all and still be a backbone to our family. And he was all not say no to something like teaching our Sunday school class for the teens, when he had everything else he needed to be doing and focusing on. So I believe that, I get my work ethic and the commitment and the ability to not say no from him. But however, I mean, my mom it was their team. My mom was also that backbone that kept us together. She was the emotional one, the feeler, the thinker, who always prayed for the family and still does. And she kept us clothed and fed and alive because there were 3 children under 4. We were very close in age, and so there was always 2 of us able to gang up on one, and constant, just a little bit of chaos. And so she was that ringleader. So anyway, she really did. She was really probably the role model that I need now in life. So just their team and the way they made that work, even during the hardest times. I mean, to me, that's what's my foundation as a child, is what has led me to where I am now. So anyway, I think that's simple to say now, but 10 years ago, it's just funny how your thought process changes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, just out of curiosity, you've mentioned that you have worked with several different school districts in the Mississippi area. What exactly got you into school nutrition to begin with, though?
Well, so growing up, I thought I would be a special education teacher. So maybe that's some kind of tie. Maybe I always saw myself in schools. My mom was a teacher. My dad was a farmer. So once I got to college, I was pursuing nursing, took a basic nutrition course, really saw that nutrition was an up and coming field. And once I really dug into just Nutrition 101, I learned that it's very diverse, and I don't like redundancy. I like a challenge, and I mean, I think I just saw that interest then. And then during my internship, I have a 9-month internship to become a registered dietitian. Through that, I worked through some clinical areas, some community areas. Only had about 2 weeks in a rotation in child nutrition, but there was just a spark there. So I chose that during my special interest rotation to do extra weeks in the child nutrition program. And it was through that I guess I didn't realize at the time it was most likely a 2-week on the job interview. But about 2 years later, after I'd been working as a clinical dietitian in a hospital setting, I was encouraged to, apply for that assistant director position in that district. And that's what brought me back to Mississippi. I was living in Mobile, Alabama, and so I came back to Mississippi, just commuted for several years before actually putting my roots here and raising my family here. But I drove here and was an assistant director for 5 years. And now, at 29, I was given the opportunity to be the director of child nutrition. And now I just am one of the old ones in the field. But I've been able to build relationships with not only my food service staff, but other child nutrition administrators and industry members. And we're a family, and we're a family that's very diverse. But we have a lot to do here, and we have one goal, and that's feeding children in a positive way that's easy for the families. And I just feel like we still have, so many good things that we can do even during this course of the pandemic. So that's why I'm here in child nutrition, and I'm here to stay.
I got to tell you this. I think that for people in child nutrition, for people that are taking their internships or doing their dietitian internship,
Yeah.
I can point to at least 3 directors that I know that are very close friends of mine now, that when they were interns, and you talk about being old, I'm old, Ashley. You are a young lady. But but I've watched these people just like Wes and you grow up in this industry. But I'll never forget conversations I had with a couple of them in a parking lot where they're in their internship, and I asked them, "What are you thinking about doing?" They said, "Well, we're going to go into the medical field. We're thinking about doing this." And I'm saying, well, just take a deep breath and take a look at child nutrition, because I'll give you a couple of little clues. It's a better schedule. You're probably going to make as much, if not possibly more money, and you're not going to be working on Saturdays and Sundays and the holidays. And I think that's I think this child nutrition industry is a gem that so many people coming out of college don't really know about. And once they find out about it, like you said, I've said this all the time, it's kind of like the mafia. It just sucks you in and won't let you out because you just fall in love with it.
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I want to actually touch on something that Bart mentioned in your introduction that I'm just personally curious about, and it's that title of school nutrition specialist. Could you share a little bit more for everyone out there that's watching right now? What exactly is a school nutrition specialist, and you know, why did you decide to pursue that type of certification?
Well, you know, I honestly didn't really know what a school nutrition specialist was either. And it was just recently, within the last 5 years, that it piqued my interest, because as I grew in leadership with the state association, School Nutrition Association, I, of course, started just networking and learning more about how much more I could give to my school district and my state if I was involved in more of the association's grassroots. And so that's really how I even learned that there was a such thing as a school nutrition specialist. And it's a certification. It's, like I said, I'm a lifelong learner. It was a challenge, but it's a pretty simple exam and training course that you go through to have an SNS behind your name. But it also means there's potential for my leadership at not only the state level, but the national level. And so I did it for myself, but I also did it for my program, because just through that learning process, I was able to learn so many things that I'm able to take back to my program and my state. And one thing that we also realized is there were very few credentialed SNS members of the state of Mississippi. So every year we've been able to grow in that leadership. And so I just think that Mississippi has so many great things along the horizon. And so every year our state association hosts that. We didn't last year, but we're getting back at it in 2021. But our goal is to host the SNS test every year now, so that we can grow our leaders in school nutrition.
That's awesome. And as a leader, that it sounds like one of your kind of keystone beliefs in your organization is that training is important, both to you and constantly learning is important. Tell everyone a little bit about how you've developed a culture around learning in your department, specifically centered around professional development and ongoing training throughout the course of each school year.
It's such an inspiration to, maybe I talk too much and teach too much, and I don't think of myself as a good teacher. I just talk to someone the way I would want them to talk to me if I was learning something new. But it's such a great feeling to share something that you're so passionate about, or something you hold so important in your role, or in your the job you're tasked with. And so whenever, it may be something as basic as teaching a brand new food service worker how to cashier, it could be just opening up a Serve Safe course for anyone in the program who's interested. I mean, those are just the small things that I like to do. I just want to always give someone the opportunity to advance themselves if they're interested at all. So I've never been someone in my 2 districts where I've worked that said only managers can take this course, or you know, you need to work 6 months before we invest in training you to cashier. I mean, I've always said from the time someone walks in the door, we will invest in you, you know. So those are the simple things that I just feel as though I'm passionate about. However, also just throughout the course of the year, we have monthly manager staff meetings where we're able to pull together and have an open discussion on what our needs are. I've always had annual staff development for my cafeteria managers, in person staff development. And then whenever I came to this school district, this was my 3rd school year here. We had a goal of having an annual general staff development big old meeting where Bart comes to speak. You know, we've had one of those because COVID did impair that and prevent us from having an in-person training. But I just believe in the energy that, you know, you get from an in-person training, and I just think that you build memories and you build networks, and that makes you love what you do. And when you love what you do, it's easy. And of course, I believe in retraining any chance we have the opportunity, if we need to take on any corrective action. But if you train them right from the start and your expectations are high enough from the start, where you've given them enough forefront information on the forefront, then I feel as though the corrective action just doesn't even, you know, at times that's not even necessary. So that's just my go on it. I make it fun. I make it transparent. I give the managers what I think they need for their staff based on their input, and I try to empower them to encourage advancement. Not everyone's going to be a cafeteria manager, but something as small as getting a certification in cashiering or ServSafe may be all that one employee needs to empower them to do a better job at what they do.
Well, when you build team, you know, what I find is those kind of meetings build team, and they build family. And that's when they sort of, you talk about corrective actions, they help each other. They bring each other, get you out of that loop. Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, you know, being, you know, you mentioned, you know, making the trainings fun and engaging for your employees. That is such a critical piece that, you know, we see often with a training program ourselves that we provide to school nutrition departments. You know, we see a ton of different districts that come to us, you know, looking for engaging, fun, interactive tools, you know, because that's really what keeps your employees interested in doing those trainings. Otherwise, it's, you know, we can talk about hand washing every single year over and over and over again, but at the end of the day, it's really just hand washing. It's about the delivery, it's about the information, and it's about, you know, really making it interesting and fun for them, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you have a passion for summer feeding programs and things of that nature. I'm curious to know a little bit more about that passion specifically, but also the impact of the USDA waivers, the extensions for this year, and just kind of your thoughts on that.
Okay, you have some time? No, so I'll break that question up. So summer feeding is something that we have implemented every year, and it's a small scale. So it's something that I've always held passion. You know, it's been passionate for me because I not only give my employees an opportunity to work during the summer, but also we are able to potentially feed students that aren't being fed at home during those summer months. And so summer feeding is absolutely a program that I, you know, challenge child nutrition administrators who have never attempted to take on to actually consider it, because it can be small scale, it can be something simple. You'll still have your summer months of planning for the school year or taking your vacation. You just have to get the right people involved that have the same passion as you, and just don't be afraid to take it on. But one of those challenges for many districts, and my district that I'm in now, is that summer feeding programs were always only really affordable for areas that were severe needs, so higher than 50% free and reduced. And so I've moved from a city school district that was 80 reduced, and then was actually the last 2 years that I was there, we were on the community eligibility provision. Well, I moved to this school district, and we are barely at 50% free and reduced. So one of my attendance centers was able to have the summer feeding program, and then I had to tell the other attendance center that's in a different community that they didn't qualify. So this is where the waivers, what we've been doing during the COVID pandemic, this is where they could come into play and help the future of summer food service programs. And hey, even National School Lunch Program and School Breakfast Program, I believe we can really learn from this. It's not just the pandemic that should have forced us to take some of USDA to read our minds and make some changes. Like, it should have. These are some just common sense things that we really should have considered for years. So specifically, feeding all students for free. My school district in Jackson County came back last year in August in person, with the majority of the students in person. We had some that opted out and chose to homeschool, but we also had a virtual option. And so I'd say less than a quarter of those students started the school year out on virtual with distance learning. So at least 75% of our school district was in person. And now we're in March, heading into the end of the school year. We have 99% of our students in person. So those waivers, what they've done for my district this year is help my fund balance that dwindled in those months that we were closed during the pandemic, during the 2020 pandemic. March to May, we were closed, and we started by curbside feeding children and families, and then we eventually learned really fast that if I was going to keep my staff on board with salaries and benefits, and if I was even going to have a fund balance by 2021 school year, then I needed to do something, and do something smart. So we put meals on buses, and we delivered them to homes with the normal bus route. And we were able to reach those students who were distance learners during those last few months of school. And I was able to, keep all of my staff. We did it smart. We social distanced. We rotated schedules. It was not easy. We had the help from maintenance and, of course, transportation, teachers, administrators. Everyone got on a school bus. We had shifts, and we fed students every day. So we were able to do that because of some of the waivers. Like, with summer feeding, you would have to require a child eat on site from 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. Close those doors. You had to stick to the contract so strictly that it really did hurt the program, because people don't like set specific rules. So the flexibility that it just gave administrators and food service workers to adapt with what worked with our school district at the time, it helped us meet our goal of feeding kids and giving children who needed the access to nutritious meals. And so that just lifted so many burdens for the community, because there was just so many unknowns in that time. And but then fast forward, we started school as normal as possible in August, but there were still some barriers. Even though we were in person, the attendance was extremely poor, not just with staff, but with students, with families being quarantined, families being positive with COVID. So we didn't just come back to school and feed students. And we also actually started out collecting free and reduced lunch applications and pricing meals, because in Mississippi, when we first came back, we thought that the waivers were going to end in September. So once we saw the extension to December and then throughout the school year, it was such a relief for administrators, teachers, families. We would have to pivot, though, in the middle of the year with we're pricing you, now we're refunding you, but hey, in December, you're going to have to complete free and reduced lunch applications, and those of you who are paid are going to have to start giving us, the $2.50 at the line again. And it was just very difficult to convey that and communicate that to students and staff and families. And so that's one thing I'm really. Go ahead, Bart.
I was just saying, don't you think that was a big struggle that caused so many people problems? Because there was this, people didn't, it's almost like it's a tale of two cities. You got some directors like yourself that have pivoted and made strategic moves, but then you got other directors who, when that change happened, it was so confusing to the community and so confusing that they lagged a tad, and suddenly their customers were going to the district next door because they had pivoted and gotten kind of their things together. One of the things that you and I both shared this last week was our experience in participating in the virtual legislative action conference.
Yes.
And I don't know how your visits with your legislators were. When we zoomed the Hill, but when we ran across, our big thing that we were talking about was just give us some consistency at the beginning of the school year. Don't change gears in August or September like you did last year. Whatever we're going to do, let's make it what we do.
Right, Bart. And that's what I'm a little obsessed with right now. It's still going to be that way. And so because paying and who's not paying, that's a burden a child and a family should never have to go through. I mean, transportation's free, books are free, Chromebooks are free now. So why isn't? Yeah, I'm a little bit obsessed with just trying to explain to everyone who will listen how important it is that those flexibilities be waived, not just through the 21-22 school year, but forever. I mean, why can't all students have healthy meals,
Well,
for free?
We've proven it can be done. We've proven it can be done. Yeah, and so that's exactly right. And I mean, there's arguments on both sides, and they're valid points. But the reality of it is you just made a great statement. Books are free, transportation's free. Getting to school, it's public school, getting to school. So why not look at a situation where
Like, I believe it was Don. We are feeding everyone free. We're providing access to different methods, whether it be grab and go, traditional at the serving line, but also like a second chance during a break between first and second period. I mean, you name it, we're doing it. Same during the lunchtime. But we really haven't seen a very high increase in participation. So it will be affordable. They can look, the data will be there. We have all of our students in school, and I've still only seen breakfast participation and like a 3% increase in lunch. So it is going to be affordable. Just because the access is there and the free meal is there, it doesn't mean that everyone will be eating free. It's just that they have the opportunity to. It's just like transportation. You have the opportunity to ride the school bus, but you may not take it. But hey, that burden is not there for that family if they need it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, with so many uncertainties going into summer, budgeting has got to be a top priority for you and something that's on your mind for this upcoming school year. What are some things that you are potentially taking into consideration for the summer?
Definitely going to be looking at more mobile serving carts and self-serve. The serving lines that I'm going to be installing will have more of a self-serve option towards the end of the line, where I've been really stuck to more traditional 5 hot wells, serving the student to the plate, the vegetables and the hot meal to the plate, and doing more of the self-serve down towards the end of the line. And so I do think that COVID will forever change some of those methods. We've ordered pen pads for all of our schools, where when many of my or elementaries and everything allowed students to still tell the cashier their PIN number or their name, and it was really honestly faster for us to key it in than for the student. But however, the masks have been a major barrier for that. So we're using the scanner and pen pads for the line, because we're really somewhat hearing impaired now that we have the mask. So there's a lot of this, somewhat made me prioritize when I wouldn't necessarily have needed to. But, that's the one thing I love about child nutrition, is there's always some kind of challenge and change. And I try to be in front of it. We know that these methods of we're doing at several of my sites, we're transporting breakfast to the classroom. And so at the beginning, when I wasn't sure how long this would last, or how long the teachers would want trash in the classrooms, we just somewhat worked with what we had. Well, now program, and the benefit is that no child is denied a breakfast. Now they are able to have one at the serving line during traditional breakfast time, but then they also have the opportunity to have that second chance shelf stable item if they were just a little too late. But so they're not losing instructional time. They're not wasting time walking to the cafeteria for a late breakfast. Now it's being brought to them. So I do know that there are better methods of transportation. We'll be able to offer colder items or hot items in the years to come, because that's what I plan to budget for next school year.
Yeah. And this year you mentioned a couple of the challenges with masks and things of that nature that had to learn to navigate around. And with
Right,
a lot of
right.
these barriers and various different challenges, this upcoming school year might see a new wave of school nutrition directors moving in. You know, old directors deciding that it's time to let a new wave kind of come into the industry. Is there any advice that you would give to a younger you stepping into this upcoming school year as a director for the very?
I could say be transparent with your staff, your teachers, your administration. Get a seat at the leadership table. Don't be afraid. Don't tell yourself that we're just food service, because every decision that they make at a leadership level does impact you. And so don't, if you're not invited, don't be afraid to say, I need to be there. And make sure, if you're not already attending board meetings, that you are at least following up on those agendas and the minutes, so that you know what's going on in the district. And there are times that a decision that's made at a Monday night board meeting may impact you 10 years down the road. So just always be on the forefront and pay attention to those communications. Definitely listen to your food service workers. Their input is valuable. Make sure they know you're listening. But at the same time, don't ever doubt yourself. If something doesn't feel right, it just may not be right. And so you were put into that position for a reason. Someone believed in you and believed that you could direct others, that you could supervise the school nutrition program, that you could schedule, and that you could make tough decisions on labor hours. Just don't ever hesitate to speak up or speak your mind, or stand your ground when you feel as though there is, a decision that needs to be made. And once you make your decision, believe in yourself. Don't hesitate to say if you could have done something differently. You still have to humble yourself, but just believe in yourself while doing what you're doing.
Well, this is the time to toot your own horn in child nutrition. And you just made a great statement, and that is, and I'm going to paraphrase, you just got to insert yourself into the conversation. You got to show up for the board meetings. You got to show up for the administration meetings. If they don't invite you, just go. Wes and I had the pleasure a few years back to do a strategic planning multi-day session with a school district in Florida. And one of the things we found out in that session was, there was a potential management company moving in, and
Wow.
but it was a year or more away. Our advice was go to the board meetings. If they don't put you on the agenda, get your 3 minutes like every other citizen gets, and give a 3-minute State of the Union. And the director there did it twice, and all of a sudden she was on the agenda from there out. They started going to every administrator's meeting, and managers attending principal staff meetings. This is a time for child. But we've proven that this is an essential part of education. It's not an ancillary, it's an essential part of education, really a part of the instructional day. And this is the time to insert yourself into the administration, because we've earned a seat at the table, and it's time to take it.
You're exactly right. And one thing that we learned just in our meetings last week with some of the legislators or the staffers, the lawmakers don't realize that when our programs are struggling and they're just say schools are skipping meal time or anything that they do that impacts the participation in our breakfast and lunch programs, closing breakfast 15 minutes earlier than scheduled, just anything small that they may feel helps their school day, that impacts our program and our funding, and then it becomes an educational problem. It becomes,
Absolutely.
you know, someone else is going to have to find a way to fund our staff. And so anyway, or to purchase, my saying is always, don't you want that good looking serving line and dining room tables in your cafe?
And that
You
good
have to
food.
find ways to pitch things like that to administrators, because they won't realize that the PTO pizza party heavily impacted your lunch program on the 60% day before Christmas. You know, if you don't take the opportunity to say so, then they won't know, and they don't realize how it impacts the whole picture. But also at the same time, you have to already build those relationships and be present in the other operations of the school district to even have the opportunity to have those tough conversations with administrators. So, I think that's one thing that child nutrition programs, administrators, new administrators especially, feel as though they have to come in and read the rules off, but then stay behind the computer. And they just really need to know that that's not productive.
Yep.
And I mean, I've learned that over the years. I did not know that when I was.
Well, they don't. You know, the administrators don't know what they don't know.
No.
And they're not going to listen to you if they don't know you. And I think that's just so important.
Yeah. Well, Ashley, Bart, just kind of wrap things up. I first off appreciate both of your time and love the insight that you've both shared. Are there any final thoughts or comments that you'd like to leave our viewers with this week, Ashley?
Just always do what's right and feels right in the moment. If there's ever anything that just doesn't sit well, whether it be professionally or, just with your associations, just don't second guess. Just breathe and just right with what you feel, and then right with what the regulations think we should be doing. Then everything's going to be okay. You're going to have your good days, you're going to have your bad days, but we'll look back 12 years from now and say we lived through the pandemic, or we lived through that change in administration. There's always a better day to come, and just don't ignore the